They were once the pride of the Black community, the brightest stars in the R&B universe, voices that carried hope, freedom, and melodies that healed millions. But fate was cruel. One collapsed into paralysis in the middle of a live performance. Another, the undisputed Queen of Soul, delivered her final song knowing a devastating illness was slowly destroying her from within. Behind the fame were silent tears. Behind the smiles were endless nights when no medicine could numb the pain. And what you're about to see in this video is even more heartbreaking. These are 21 Black R&B legends who were forced to walk away from their careers because of terminal illness. If music has ever carried you back to your most cherished memories, take this journey with us. Like if you've ever heard one of these voices, and share, so their light never fades into silence. Johnny Adams. Johnny Adams, the angelic voice that slowly faded into silence. They called him the man with the voice of an angel. Johnny Adams once softened millions of hearts with his soaring tenor, a delicate fusion of soul, blues, and gospel. He never needed volume or theatrics. When he sang, rooms grew still, as if the audience forgot how to breathe. With timeless love songs like Reconsider Me, Johnny became a symbol of tenderness and emotional depth in Southern music. Yet behind the glow of the stage lights, a quiet struggle was unfolding. At the height of his career, Johnny learned he had prostate cancer. It didn't arrive with sharp pain or dramatic warning signs. It crept in silently, persistent and unforgiving, like a needle piercing him day after day, slowly draining the life from within. In the fall of 1997, during a rehearsal in New Orleans, the truth revealed itself. Mid-song, Johnny suddenly sank into a chair. His voice wavered, then trembled. An assistant rushed to his side as panic filled Johnny's eyes. "I can't control my breathing," he whispered, sweat streaming down his face. This wasn't exhaustion. It was his body quietly surrendering. Concerts were canceled. Recording plans were put on hold, indefinitely. Those closest to him said Johnny would often sit alone in the studio, staring at the microphone, waiting, perhaps, for a voice that might never return. One day, he finally confessed to his manager, "I'm afraid I won't be able to sing anymore." In that moment, his farewell had already begun. In his final months, Johnny Adams withdrew from the public eye. He didn't want to be remembered as fragile. But distance couldn't erase what he had given. When news of his passing broke in September 1998, New Orleans fell into an unfamiliar hush. Not because he was gone, but because the world had lost a voice that could never be replaced. Johnny Adams gave his life to music, then quietly slipped away, carried off by an illness he never complained about. His story reminds us how fragile life truly is, and that sometimes, a voice doesn't fall silent because it loses its beauty, but because it has already given everything it had to the world. Don Covay. Don Covay. A quiet giant silenced by fate. His name may not come up every day, but to true soul and R&B lovers, Don Covay remains an underground legend. A master songwriter who penned classics for Aretha Franklin, Otis Redding, and himself. Including the timeless Mercy, Don wasn't just a performer. He was a relentless creator. His voice had a gritty, twisting edge, slicing through emotion, telling a story with every note like a blade to the heart. Then, one December afternoon in 1992, everything shattered. While visiting a fellow musician's home in Brooklyn, Don suddenly collapsed. He was rushed to the hospital after suffering a massive stroke. His body betrayed him. Paralysis set in. His mouth twisted. His right hand trembled uncontrollably. But the cruelest loss of all was his voice, fractured beyond recognition. Once a master of breath and phrasing, Don could no longer form full sentences. He fought to speak, to write even a single word, while melodies screamed inside his mind with no way out. Doctors offered little hope, and Don felt it. "I've written hundreds of songs," he said during therapy. "Now I can't even say my name right." For 6 long years, he tried to return to music. If only to compose, if only to tap out a rhythm, but his body refused to follow his spirit. His guitar gathered dust. The studio went dark. Friends from the industry visited, playing new records, sharing stories, but Don could only nod, tears falling in silence. He never officially retired, yet the world understood. A genius had been forced off the stage without a farewell. When Don Covay passed away in 2015, many were stunned to learn he had lived nearly 2 decades in near seclusion. No spotlight, no microphone, no applause. What remained was the legacy of a man who proved that soul music isn't just something you sing, it's something you are. Don Covay needed no final words. His silence became the most heartbreaking song he ever wrote, reminding us that every breath, every word, every note is a gift not to be taken for granted. Oh, Wright was the voice that seemed to weep itself into ashes. They called him Memphis Soul's saddest singer, and for good reason. His voice carried a raw, wordless sob. A single note was enough to hush a room and hold listeners breathless. In songs like A Nickel and a Nail and Ace of Spades, Wright didn't sing as an entertainer, he sang like a man bleeding his truth straight into the microphone. Every line felt lived in, every lyric heavy with pain. Success arrived swiftly, but tragedy followed close behind. By the late 1970s, Wright began coughing relentlessly, sharp pain slicing through his chest whenever he tried to speak. At first, he brushed it off as the cost of years of smoking and hard living. But when the pain grew unbearable, he finally sought medical help. The diagnosis landed like a death sentence: terminal lung cancer, already metastasized. The warning signs had been there. During a show in Texas, midway through 8 Men for Women, Wright suddenly collapsed on stage, clutching his chest as the music screeched to a halt. The audience thought it was part of the act. Wright knew better. Time was slipping away. What followed were months of quiet devastation. He refused chemotherapy, choosing painkillers instead, anything that would allow him to sing a few more nights. A close friend later recalled Wright sitting by a window, staring up at the sky, whispering, "I'm not going to die in a hospital. I'm going to die with music in my heart." His final performance, in a small Mississippi hall, remains haunting. His voice trembled. The coughing wouldn't stop. Yet somehow, he finished the song. When the curtain fell, he slumped into a chair, sweat soaking through his shirt, not a single word spoken. Oh, Wright died in 1980, quietly, without spectacle or farewell. A great artist fading like a candle burning down to its final drop of wax. The story of Wright reminds us that not every light is extinguished by time. Some are stolen by illness at their very brightest. Treasure your voice, your body, your health, because they can vanish before you ever get the chance to say goodbye. Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye, the fallen angel of music. Once crowned the Prince of Motown, he was a rare genius who fused soul, funk, and R&B into timeless masterpieces like What's Going On and Let's Get It On. He had the looks, the charm, the fame, and a voice that could melt the world. From the outside, Marvin seemed to have everything a man could ever want. But behind those soulful eyes lived a man at war with himself. Haunted by an abusive father, Marvin carried childhood trauma into adulthood, battling depression, anxiety, and a crushing sense of isolation. Even at the height of his success, those inner wounds never healed. In 1979, Marvin vanished without warning. No farewell. No explanation. Fans later learned he had retreated to Belgium, isolating himself from the spotlight while struggling with drug addiction. His most dangerous illness wasn't physical, it was mental. One former manager recalled a heartbreaking moment. He was curled up on the couch, whispering prayers. He didn't believe he could love, sing, or even exist. In April 1983, Marvin returned for the Sexual Healing Tour, but something was unmistakably different. The magic flickered, brilliant flashes interrupted by confusion and despair. Backstage one night, resting his head on a friend's shoulder, he whispered, "I don't see any way out." Less than a year later, tragedy struck. Marvin Gaye was shot and killed by his own father during an argument. A brutal ending for a soul that had suffered in silence for decades. Yet the truth is, Marvin didn't lose his life in a single moment. He had been fading long before as mental illness quietly stripped away his joy, his safety, and his sense of self. Marvin Gaye didn't die overnight. He disappeared slowly, piece by piece, when music, once his refuge, became a place to hide instead of heal. His story reminds us that not all illnesses leave visible scars. Some wounds can only be heard by the heart. If someone smiles but their eyes look tired, don't assume they're fine. Slow down. Listen deeper. And love your soul as if it's fragile, because sometimes it is. Major Lance, the quiet collapse of Chicago soul. In the 1960s, Major Lance was the embodiment of a dream. A shining star of Chicago soul, he lit up stages with boundless energy, a youthful voice, and an infectious smile. Songs like The Monkey Time and weren't just hits, they were pure joy. On stage, Lance looked unstoppable, a symbol of hope and happiness for African Americans during a time of deep social unrest. But behind the dancing and laughter, a darker reality was taking shape. His body was failing him in silence. Crushing headaches, relentless fatigue, sudden shortness of breath that made even standing feel like a struggle. At first, Lance brushed it off as aging, but by the late 1980s, doctors delivered a devastating truth. High blood pressure, diabetes, liver failure, heart damage. One diagnosis piled onto another, forming a life sentence with no appeal. The breaking point came in 1988 at the Apollo Theater. In the middle of Ain't No Soul in These Old Shoes, Lance suddenly stopped singing. He turned toward the backstage and collapsed. The audience thought it was part of the act. The band knew better. Blood poured from his nose. His blood pressure had spiked to dangerous levels. An ambulance was called, and for the first time in his career, Major Lance canceled a show. After that night, everything slowed. Tours became rare. Recording sessions were postponed, then quietly abandoned. Some weeks, he couldn't even leave his bed. I'd see him sit there for hours, staring at his shoes, not saying a word, a close musician later recalled. He knew he wasn't going anywhere in them anymore. Major Lance never formally announced his retirement, but he never returned to the stage. He spent his final years in a small apartment in Decatur, Georgia, occasionally answering calls from old bandmates and friends who remembered who he once was. When he died of heart failure in 1994, the news barely made headlines. Yet for those who truly heard him, it felt like the silence of an entire era. Major Lance's story is a haunting reminder that joy on stage is sometimes just a mask. Take care of your body, it can't sing forever. And if you ever fall in love with one of his songs, remember this: behind that joyful melody was a man so broken that one day, he simply couldn't sing anymore. Ray Charles. Ray Charles, the blind genius who quietly stepped away as his body slowly failed, was more than a musician. He was resilience in human form. Born into poverty and blinded by illness at just 7 years old, he went on to reshape American music forever, blending soul, jazz, country, and R&B into a sound the world had never heard before. Georgia on My Mind, Hit the Road Jack, I Got a Woman. Each song became a living chapter in the story of Black American culture. Yet behind the applause, Ray Charles was fighting a private war. Few knew how often he stood on the edge of death. By the late 1980s, years of heroin and alcohol abuse, long after he had achieved sobriety, had left lasting damage. His kidneys and liver were failing, slowly, relentlessly. Recovery had saved his life, but it could not erase the cost. In 1995, during a performance in Kansas City, Ray sat at the piano playing You Don't Know Me when his hand suddenly slipped from the keys. The audience never noticed, but saxophonist David "Fathead" Newman did. Ray was trembling. His voice was strained. Backstage, he began vomiting blood. An ambulance was called, but Ray refused to go. "Don't let anyone see me weak," he said. "I'm still Ray Charles." By 2000, he began canceling shows. The public was told it was due to personal reasons. The truth was far more serious. Ray was undergoing aggressive treatment for liver, kidney, and heart failure. Doctors warned him he had less than 2 years to live without a transplant. He refused. Pride, dignity, and identity mattered more to him than survival. He spent his final days in his Beverly Hills mansion, once filled with music, laughter, and life. Now, the rooms echoed with silence. Ray didn't want anyone to see him in a wheelchair, a family member recalled. He'd rather disappear than be remembered as anything less than himself. Ray Charles passed away in 2004, leaving behind a void no one could ever fill. Before that, he quietly withdrew from the stage, like a blind soldier who knew his journey had reached its end. His story is not just about music. It's about a man who overcame everything only to face the one battle no one escapes. And still, he lived every note with everything he had. That is how Ray Charles should be remembered, and how all of us should strive to live, so that even when we are broken, exhausted, or lost in the dark, we leave behind something that never fades. David Ruffin. David Ruffin, the forsaken soul of the Temptations. He wasn't just the group's lead singer, he was the fire inside every harmony, the ache behind every lyric. Ain't too proud to beg. My girl. No one delivers that kind of heartbreak without having lived it. Polished on the outside, sharp in his suits, commanding in his presence. Yet beneath the spotlight, David carried a hollow loneliness no applause could fill. Behind the halo of fame, his body was quietly failing. Years of heavy smoking and drug use left him battling chronic lung disease. But it wasn't his lungs alone that pushed him away from music, it was the slow-burning mental illness that crept into his thoughts, corroding his emotions and sense of reality. In 1989, during a private rehearsal in Detroit, David suddenly froze. Minutes passed. The music kept playing. He stood motionless, eyes locked on the wall, unresponsive. I thought he was just focused, recalled Otis Williams. But when I walked over, David was crying. In a broken whisper, he said, "I can't hear the music anymore." From then on, shows were canceled. Studio sessions were abandoned mid-song. He complained of suffocating even when alone in an empty room. During moments of clarity, he sang as powerfully as ever, like nothing was wrong. Then the darkness returned. Hallucinations overtook him. Once, he was found wandering the streets in the dead of winter, coatless, muttering fragments of lyrics that no longer made sense. That was when his family knew he needed help. David Ruffin never officially retired. The stage simply stopped calling his name. Mental illness and respiratory failure slowly silenced one of the most emotionally raw voices in R&B history. In 1991, he died from a drug overdose. Sudden, yet tragically inevitable. The world mourned, but those closest to him understood. David had already been gone for years. Some artists don't disappear into darkness, they disappear into themselves. David Ruffin's story reminds us that what destroys greatness isn't always lost opportunity, but the absence of healing. Melvin Franklin. The wall that never moved finally fell, quietly. Melvin Franklin was the backbone of the Temptations, the steady rhythm keeper whose deep bass voice anchored the group like bedrock. He never chased the spotlight, yet his presence was impossible to miss. Solid. Dependable. Always in place. To the world, Melvin looked indestructible. But his body was slowly betraying him. As early as the 1970s, Melvin was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, a brutal autoimmune disease that inflames joints and inflicts relentless pain. Determined not to let it steal his music, he performed through the agony, relying on heavy doses of painkillers, so many that doctors warned him of permanent nerve damage. Still, he stayed on stage. Then came a night in 1993. In the middle of a performance, Melvin's entire body locked up. He didn't collapse. He fought to finish the final line. But backstage, an assistant realized the truth. Melvin couldn't stand. His hands were clenched. His legs were numb. The first wave of paralysis had arrived. Doctors were firm. Stop performing immediately. The disease had reached his nervous system. If he continued, he risked losing the ability to walk forever. Melvin asked for just one thing. "Can I record one more song?" That recording became his last. Afterward, he withdrew from public life, cared for by his family. His wife, Anise, later shared that every morning Melvin would sit quietly in a chair, play old records, and sing along, no words, just memory and feeling. When someone once asked if he wanted to return to the stage, he gently shook his head. "I was there," he said. "Now I just want to hear it again." In 1995, after suffering a series of seizures caused by neurological complications, Melvin Franklin passed away in his sleep. The media reported the loss. Friends mourned. But most audiences never knew how hard he fought, how much pain he endured, just to keep the music standing strong. Melvin Franklin reminds us that strength does not mean immortality. Some people carry the weight of the world on their shoulders until those shoulders can no longer hold it. And some battles are fought in silence, beyond applause or recognition. If you are healthy today, never take it for granted. Live fully. Protect your body. Because it is not guaranteed, it is a miracle. Curtis Mayfield. Curtis Mayfield. The silent genius who never stopped speaking through his soul. Curtis Mayfield stands as one of the most influential figures in American funk and soul history. He was the soundtrack of the civil rights movement, a voice of faith, struggle, and hope that uplifted generations through timeless anthems like People Get Ready and Move On Up. His guitar carried optimism, his lyrics carried truth, but behind that hopeful sound awaited a tragedy no one could have imagined. In August 1990, during an outdoor performance in Brooklyn, disaster struck. A massive lighting rig collapsed from above, slamming into Mayfield as he stood on stage. The impact shattered his cervical spine. In an instant, Curtis Mayfield was paralyzed from the neck down. His body fell silent, but his mind did not. His spirit did not. Though he could no longer move a muscle, his creativity remained fiercely alive. Unable to lift a finger, Mayfield continued to write music the only way he could, by singing. Line by line, breath by breath, he dictated verses to engineers, shaping every word with subtle pauses, eye movements, and unwavering focus. Music still flowed through him, even when his body refused to cooperate. His final album, New World Order, stands as a powerful testament to that unbreakable will. Recorded while lying flat on his back, struggling for air, every lyric still carried weight, compassion, and humanity. The voice was weaker, but the message was stronger than ever. A close friend once said, he wasn't just an artist. He was an indomitable spirit, someone who refused to surrender even when the world told him it was over. Curtis Mayfield passed away in 1999 due to complications from lung disease. Yet his life fulfilled the very truth he had always sung. Not everyone who moves slowly is giving up. Some people, even when completely still, continue to move forward through faith, purpose, and music. His story reminds us that living beautifully isn't about running faster than anyone else. It's about never stopping in your heart. And when music is born from the soul, it can never be silenced. Aretha Franklin. Aretha Franklin. A great voice fading quietly in pain. Aretha Franklin was more than the queen of soul. She was the very definition of strength, black beauty, and unshakable pride. Through her voice, the world bowed. From respect to natural woman, she didn't just sing songs. She taught generations how to live, how to love, and how to stand tall in their truth. Every note carried power. Every performance felt eternal. But behind the glory, a silent pain was slowly taking over. Around 2010, something began to change. Aretha started canceling shows without explanation. She withdrew from interviews, disappeared from public life, and insisted everything was fine. Fans sensed something was wrong, but she kept her suffering private. In 2011, whispers of cancer began to circulate, yet no confirmation ever came. Then came a haunting night in Chicago. Aretha stepped onto the stage noticeably thinner, clutching her stomach as she sang Bridge Over Troubled Water. The voice was still beautiful, but no longer invincible. Halfway through the song, she had to sit down, fighting through the pain. Backstage, a staff member later revealed that she broke down in tears, saying softly, "I can't control my body anymore." The truth soon followed: pancreatic cancer, a brutal disease that advances quietly, painfully, and is rarely survivable in its later stages. Aretha chose not to undergo chemotherapy. Instead, she returned to her home in Detroit, the city where it all began, to live out her final months on her own terms. Aretha Franklin passed away in 2018. But in many ways, she had already left the stage long before, without spotlights, without applause, without farewell tours. Only her recordings remained. Her voice became her legacy. And her quiet exit reminds us that even the strongest souls have limits. We all do. Yet when we stay true to who we are, our voices can outlive our lives. You've walked with us through 10 stories of loss. Thank you for not turning away. Thank you for daring to look behind the spotlight and face the truth. But the story isn't over. There are still voices unheard, names unspoken, legends who might still be here today with better care, more rest, and less pain. Or perhaps it was that very suffering that made them eternal. What do you think? Leave your thoughts below. Queen of one defiant hit and a silent heart. Jean Knight shook America in 1971 with Mr. Big Stuff, a song that unexpectedly became a feminist anthem of its time. Her sharp delivery, confident tone, and fearless presence set her apart in a crowded soul era. She didn't just sing, she challenged. Yet behind the spotlight and applause lived a woman carrying quiet pain. In her later years, Jean was diagnosed with chronic heart disease. Irregular rhythms, unstable blood pressure, and sudden chest pain slowly pulled her away from the stage she once commanded. A close friend recalled a small event in Louisiana where Jean collapsed moments after leaving the stage, struggling to breathe. She spoke no words, only raised her hand for silence before being taken home. Jean refused invasive treatment, choosing peace over publicity. She retreated to her family, far from headlines and sympathy. "I don't want people to remember me on my deathbed," she once said. "I want them to remember me as a woman who stood up and sang for herself." Jean Knight passed away in 2023 as quietly as she exited the spotlight. But her voice still echoes in every listener who ever felt stronger because of her music. Some hearts don't fade from lack of applause, they surrender with dignity. We live only once, and Jean lived hers as a silent warrior. Bobby Womack was a master storyteller of pain and fading memories. A true soul genius whose voice trembled like a wounded heart. Every song he sang felt like a confession, a raw page torn from his own life. Yet, in a twist no one expected, this legendary narrator slowly stepped away from the spotlight. Not because his passion ran dry, but because his memories began to betray him. In the early 2010s, cracks started to show. On stage, Bobby would suddenly forget the lyrics to songs he had lived and breathed for decades. During one performance in London, he stopped mid-verse of Across 110th Street, stared at the band, and quietly asked, "Where am I?" That haunting moment was the first warning. Doctors later confirmed the devastating truth: early-stage Alzheimer's disease, along with prostate cancer. Bobby pushed on for a handful of performances, but the exhaustion in his eyes told a deeper story. A close friend recalled their final meeting. Bobby sat at the piano, hands resting on the keys, not playing. He whispered, "I remember the melody, but I don't remember why it hurts so much." Bobby Womack passed away in 2014, but long before then, he had already said a quiet goodbye to the stage. For him, stepping back was not defeat. It was an act of dignity, a way to protect the last beautiful image of who he was. His story reminds us that the most terrifying loss isn't death itself, but the moment our memories fade and we no longer recognize ourselves. So live fully, love deeply, and sing your truth, before memory leaves us standing alone in the middle of life. Donny Hathaway. Donny Hathaway, the genius suspended between brilliance and shadow. He wasn't just a singer, he was a phenomenon. His voice felt like a bridge between earth and sky, gospel fire poured into soul and jazz. Songs like A Song for You and Someday We'll All Be Free weren't merely love songs. They were prayers, aching with hope and humanity. Yet behind that radiant music lived a darkness few could reach. Donny battled schizophrenia, a silent war that raged even when the spotlight made everything look whole. On stage he soared. Off stage, paranoia whispered relentlessly, voices no one else could hear. He once spoke to a television that wasn't even on, convinced the FBI was listening through a hotel sound system. In 1979, while recording a reunion project with Roberta Flack, Donny vanished from the studio. Hours later, he was found dead after falling from a 15th-floor window of New York's Essex House Hotel. What happened in his final moments remains unknown, but his family believed it was the surrender of a soul that had run out of ways to escape the pain. Donny Hathaway never chose to leave the stage. Illness quietly pulled him from the light. We may not control the storms inside our minds, but we can choose compassion, and above all, make sure no one ever walks into the darkness alone. Billy Preston. Billy Preston. The so-called fifth Beatle was ultimately abandoned by his own body. Once hailed as a keyboard prodigy who could make the world tremble with a handful of notes, Billy Preston shared stages with legends like Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin, and the Rolling Stones. His sound was electric, joyful, and unmistakably alive. Yet behind that brilliance was a long, silent war with kidney disease and liver failure, a battle that shadowed him for decades. By the early 2000s, Billy slowly vanished from the spotlight. A close friend later recalled a heartbreaking moment in the studio. Midway through a session, Billy suddenly had to stop, overwhelmed by dizziness and the loss of bladder control. The shame crushed him. He broke down in tears, covered his face, and whispered, "I can't play music if I can't control my body." From that day on, he refused to perform. As his health continued to fail, the music faded with it. In 2006, Billy Preston passed away quietly. But for those who truly listened, his songs remain the last echo of a genius betrayed not by fame or fortune, but by his own fragile body. Care for your body as you do your soul, because when it finally gives out, even the deepest passion may not be enough to carry you through. Minnie Riperton. Minnie Riperton. The 5-octave angel whose wings were broken by cancer. Minnie Riperton was the very definition of purity and grace. Her voice soared effortlessly across 5 octaves, light as air yet powerful enough to stop time. Loving You became a tender lullaby for an entire generation, a song that felt like love itself whispering through the radio. But behind those heavenly notes, Minnie was carrying a devastating secret. In 1976, she was diagnosed with terminal breast cancer. Rather than hiding, she chose courage, going public with her illness and becoming a passionate spokesperson for the American Cancer Society. Still, deep inside, she knew her time was slipping away. During a televised performance, she clutched her stomach as her voice trembled. Backstage, she quietly confessed to her husband, "I can't sing like I used to." Soon after, Minnie stepped away from the spotlight, choosing instead to spend her remaining days wrapped in the love of her children. In 1979, Minnie Riperton passed away at just 31 years old. A voice that touched heaven was taken far too soon, leaving a silence no one could ever truly fill. Her story is a reminder to listen to your body and to your heart. If there is something you were born to sing, don't wait. Sing it today. Luther Ingram. Luther Ingram. A voice that once held the heart, fading quietly into silence. He made generations ache with a single line, "If loving you is wrong, I don't want to be right." His voice sounded like a midnight confession, raw, vulnerable, painfully honest. But beyond the stage lights, Luther was fighting a private war. In the late 90s, severe kidney failure forced him into regular dialysis. He kept singing, but each performance took more from him than the last. At a small venue in Missouri, he stepped onto the stage with trembling legs, unable to stand, forced to sit as he sang his truth. After that night, he made a quiet decision: no more touring. His younger brother later recalled, he looked in the mirror and said, "The audience deserves to see me as I am, not a shadow of who I used to be." Luther Ingram stepped away without headlines, without goodbyes. He passed in 2007. A voice born to break hearts, slowly undone by illness from within. And yet his message remains: if your heart still beats strong, don't hesitate. Love deeply, live fully, and give everything you have, just as Luther did. Isaac Hayes. Isaac Hayes. The man wrapped in gold ultimately bowed to blood, fate, and time. He was a force unlike any other, bald head gleaming under the lights, dark sunglasses hiding weary eyes, heavy gold chains resting on his chest, and a deep, thunderous baritone that sounded less like a voice and more like a divine decree. An Oscar-winning musician and a sonic architect of soul, Hayes forever reshaped music through Shaft and a string of legendary film scores that pulsed with power and authority. Yet beneath that commanding exterior lived a body far more fragile than he ever let on. In 2006, Hayes was hospitalized after suffering a stroke, forcing the cancellation of all his performances. A relative later revealed that during rehab, his hands trembled so violently he could no longer strike the right notes. Without explanation or farewell, he quietly stepped away. Music stopped. The spotlight faded. He retreated to a secluded life on his Tennessee farm, choosing silence over struggle. Then, in 2008, he was found dead at home, his heart giving out without warning. Few could believe that the towering presence who once dominated the stage had fallen to his own failing body. Isaac Hayes left behind more than music. He left a lesson. Sometimes, true strength lies in knowing when to stop. And sometimes, slowing down isn't giving up, it's learning how to live longer, deeper, and more fully. Linda Jones. Linda Jones. A crystal-clear soprano taken far too soon. With one of the sweetest, most heart-piercing voices in soul music, Linda Jones could stop time with a single note. Her signature song, Hypnotized, melted hearts everywhere, yet her own life proved heartbreakingly brief, like the soaring high notes she sang so effortlessly. Diagnosed with diabetes at a young age, Linda kept her illness hidden, determined not to burden her fans or dim the magic she brought to the stage. In 1972, during a small performance at a Harlem tea room, she finished a song and quietly asked to step away. Leaning toward her manager, she whispered, "I'm cold all over. I can't see clearly." Those words marked her final moments as a performer. Just hours later, Linda slipped into a coma caused by diabetic complications and never regained consciousness. She was only 27 years old. A voice that had just begun to bloom was silenced without warning. Life is fragile. Care for it as gently as you would a rare, irreplaceable note in a song. Betty Wright. Betty Wright, the quiet funk soul warrior in her final stand, was never just a voice. She was a blaze. A woman who forged pain into power through timeless anthems like Clean Up Woman and Tonight is the Night. She carried the heart of a fighter and poured it into every note, mentoring a new generation of artists, from Beyoncé onward, while never losing her own fire. In her final years, Betty slowly stepped out of the spotlight. Those close to her later revealed she had been battling cancer for a long time. Still, she recorded. Still, she sang, though she no longer performed. During one of her last sessions, a technician recalled how she had to sit and rest after every verse, yet she insisted, "I have to record this message. This is the last time." Betty Wright passed away in 2020, leaving behind a legacy etched in courage and soul. She fought until the very end with the only weapon she ever needed, her voice. We can't escape death, but we can choose how we live. Like Betty, burning bright, never silent, never retreating. Sharon Jones. Sharon Jones. A retro flame that ignited in the new century, only to burn out far too soon. She wasn't a star in her 20s, or even her 30s. Fame found her late in her 40s, but when it did, she sang as if she were reclaiming lost time. Her voice was raw, explosive, and unapologetically alive. As the queen of retro soul and the beating heart of the Dap Kings, Sharon Jones didn't just perform music, she resurrected an entire genre and dragged it back into the spotlight by sheer force of will. But that blazing fire was soon tested by something far more ruthless than time. In 2013, Sharon was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. She stepped away from the stage for treatment, then shocked the world by returning just months later. Bald, visibly fragile, yet radiating unstoppable energy. To the public, she looked like a woman defying death. To those closest to her, they knew the truth. The pain followed her every night. During one of her final shows in New York, the moment the lights dimmed, Sharon collapsed backstage. Catching her breath, she whispered to her assistant, "I want the audience to see me as Sharon Jones." After that night, she quietly stepped away from performing. A year later, she passed away, surrounded by those she loved. Sharon Jones didn't live long, but she lived brilliantly. Her life reminds us that we don't get to choose when we arrive or when we leave. But we do get to choose how fiercely, how brightly, we burn while we're here. Ernie Isley. Ernie Isley. The quiet warrior of the Isley family faded from the spotlight without noise or spectacle. Among the legendary Isley brothers, Ernie was the soft-spoken youngest sibling, but he was also the guitarist who gave their music its fire. He wasn't the loudest voice in the room. He was the mind, the soul, the hands that shaped some of funk and R&B's most revolutionary sounds. In the 1980s and 1990s, Ernie became the band's creative engine, pushing their music into new, fearless territory. Then, in the early 2000s, he slowly disappeared. No tours, no solo projects, no public explanation. Behind closed doors, Ernie was fighting peripheral neuropathy, a devastating condition that robbed him of muscle control and sensation. His hands would go numb. Spasms came without warning. Feeling vanished from his fingertips, the very tools that defined his life. The cruelest fate for a guitarist. During one studio session, Ernie sat with his guitar for over an hour, unable to play a single chord. Finally, he set it down and whispered, "I can't fool the audience anymore." That moment broke something inside him. From then on, he retreated into the shadows, stepping away from the stage he once commanded, while the music still burned fiercely in his heart. Ernie Isley didn't truly die that day, but a part of him disappeared the moment his fingers could no longer hear the strings. Behind every spotlight lies a silent war against illness, isolation, and unimaginable sacrifice. Treasure every voice, every note, every performance, because you never know when it may be the last. Understanding is the purest form of love we can give an artist, and love is the one thing illness can never take away. Thank you for listening, for feeling, and for honoring the stories no one wants to tell. If any of these voices touched your heart, leave a comment as a tribute. And don't forget to like and share this video, so these souls can continue to live on in the hearts of music lovers everywhere.